We are really furniture makers, so cabinet makers. We're making quite a variety, a lot more than cabinets. Over here, you can see, some of the things that were made here. Watch your hat by the candle there, thank you. Yeah, I know I've had multiple instances of hats catching on fire here during night programs. So, you can see a few of the things that were made here, and some tables, a chair I helped make, and a few other things, and make beds and sofas and decorative items. So, the cabinet maker was really a very skilled worker, somebody who had the skills and tools to make these kind of things, and a very common job. Most towns had a cabinet shop like this, or maybe a couple even. So, this also is a full-time job. Cabinet makers were generally working year-round, full-time as woodworkers, unlike some of the other trades in the countryside. So it does lead to the question, how much work were they doing at night by candlelight? Did they work at night? Did they go home early when the sun went down in winter? And the answer is that they did work by candlelight. We know from records, we know from diaries that that work was done, especially on winter nights. And one of the interesting diaries I really like is a young apprentice cabinet maker from Greenfield, Massachusetts, who actually talks about, in his shop at least, they worked often until 9 o'clock on winter nights, even later than in the summer, which was unusual. I thought interesting, I shouldn't say unusual. It was very interesting. So clearly work was being done at night by candlelight, and it's something that kind of interested me as somebody that obviously has done this, but is also a modern person who's very used to having light all the time, no matter what time of day or night or year. It is interesting to try and imagine what they were able to do. Some of the jobs in this shop, some of the jobs like fine finishing, delicate carving, or inlay, almost certainly would have required daylight. Those things I can't imagine they were doing at night. But there are some jobs that you certainly can imagine. Things like planing boards is something we spend a lot of time doing. We're getting wood from our sawmill coming in a very rough state. So there's a lot of work with planes to get it flat and smooth and thin down to thickness. So I just got a small piece of cherry here. This is a jack plane, so this is a plane that we use to do most of the work of removing material, flattening, thicknessing. Right now I'm just doing the edge here, and really it's a matter of just running along. You can kind of work by feel. When you're flattening, say, the face of a board, you can feel as it smooths it out. You can feel potentially high and low spots. So that's another sense that you can use beyond just your sight. And even the sound it makes can be a clue. So the sound of a very sharp blade cutting through wood is one that's very pleasant to any woodworker, so it's a very crisp sound. And sometimes even the sound and feel can tell you when it's starting to get dull. It's also true with saws, like our sawmill. So we do have other senses that we can use, and we don't have to just use vision, although as modern people I think we rely on that a lot more. But still, for a lot of the steps, you really have to see what you're doing. So I kind of set myself as a challenge doing some of the more detailed work by candlelight. So last week I cut some dovetails using not even as many candles. We only had 2 at the time, and actually managed to cut some dovetails. And this was a technique that was used all the time at the time in woodworking, and these are the actual tails. We also have the pins they fit into, and that's those were both cut with sawn rather with the saw, and then used chisels to chisel out and clean up between them. And that's a job that, if done right and with glue, they use what's called hide glue at the time, it'll actually make a stronger fit than nails, a stronger join than nailing. And so that was done for boxes like this, casework, drawers. It was a really common technique, and I'm sure it was done by candlelight. So it was very interesting to do this. It took a lot longer than any other dovetails I cut, and was a challenge, but I think came out very well. Even in daylight, it actually looked pretty good. So that was a fun experience tonight. I'm chopping a mortise. That was another type of joinery that was very common. You have what are called mortises. These kind of slot here, and then a tenon that would fit into the mortise. So mortise and tenons were used in tables, some chairs, not that particular one, but others. And that was another very common technique. And again, it would get glue, and if done right, make a very strong fit. So I'm chopping a mortise on a piece of cherry. So I got it secured to the bench using what's called a mortising chisel, and this is actually what we use to chop it and create that. You have to make sure you're being very careful with keeping it straight down and going to the right depth, keeping the ends even. So again, precision work, but it is kind of a fun experience to try and do it by candlelight. And I found that really one thing that was interesting was just how much I had to move the candle, and for the dovetail, pretty much every step I did, I was moving this candle somewhere else. Sometimes I needed it behind me, so I grabbed the little table I made and put it there. So, being able to get that candle exactly where you need it was very necessary for when you're doing this kind of work. Also learning not to have it close to your work, but not so close that when you lean in to look close, your hair catches on fire. That's almost a close call there earlier, but I think people at the time were much more aware of things like candles and open flames, since that was part of your everyday life. But one of the things that shows up very, very often, in fact, one of the most common things on the account books of cabinet makers at the time were candle stands, which are little tables that are really meant to hold candles. And so I can really start to appreciate why having a small table you can easily move around and put a candle exactly where you want would be very handy, especially if you only had 1 or 2 candles lit. And one type of candle stand that I actually like to make is a kind that actually can be adjusted up and down. There's some of them had a wooden ratchet mechanism that allowed you to emit it at a very precise height. And so I've started to realize why they would have gone through all the extra work to make that. This one, for a lot of things I was making, was a little too low. I would run it here, I would run it here. It actually would be very handy to have. So, anyway, this was an interesting experience. And if anyone has any questions about the shop, then feel free to ask. Cabinet making. If you come during the daytime, you can get a better view of some of the things that we have made here and are continuing to make, things that are going into the village.
Thank you very much.
You're very